All right. Welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today, and so glad to be talking to Carlos, the left-handed leftist. How you doing, Mr. Childs?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good on this somewhat colder than yesterday day out here in Maryland.
It's kind of raw. Also, with all that snow, the wind blowing over it makes it feel even colder. Definitely I feel that cold as well, Carlos. And I did want to just highlight the title. I don't always do this, but the thumbnail is a change gonna come with those two lions of the civil rights movement. I would say lions of American history, Dr. King and Malcolm X, and they're smiling there. I mentioned Carlos during the break or during the pre-show prep. They were smiling because looked like the Civil Rights Act was going to pass. I think also they were happy to be with each other. But I'm going to explain a little bit more too. But it's kind of a good picture, don't you think?
No, it is a great picture. It's definitely, I mean, we need more pictures of just leaders, actual leaders coming together and things like that. No, this was great.
And it is Black History Month, which we'll talk about our last program, which was the first show that was during Black History Month. Got a little bit of a negative comment, Carlos, and kind of directed at you as well. We talked about the issue of should there be a Black History Month? So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But I asked the question: is a change going to come? That's obviously citing to or referencing the great song by Sam Cooke, "A Change Is Gonna Come." And the reason I asked it, Carlos, this was a direct kind of, I guess, homage, shall we say, to your latest podcast, your latest full podcast with Gus Griffin from Montgomery College. So I really wanted to spend some time. Did you enjoy that conversation? It seemed so informative.
I did. No, I did. Gus is a friend from a previous job. We worked together in coalition when I was at the ACLU of Maryland, working on legal justice, police accountability, and things like that. Now, Gus is amazing, intelligent. I mean, the man is a scholar and could just list out different things throughout the civil rights period, Reconstruction, all that. I learned a lot about even Malcolm X's history. I didn't know so much about his father being killed by the Klan and stuff like that, and the threats towards him and his family's life. So yeah,
I didn't know that
he was
either.
A child.
I know he talked about how his family had also been like Dr. King's, somewhat privileged in contrast to most Black families in the South at that time. And Malcolm X's family moved north, but I was not aware of that violence that was, obviously so many Black families experienced that racist mobs, but I wasn't aware of it with respect to Malcolm X. So that was very interesting.
Definitely.
I don't know. I read the autobiography that he did with Alex, the Roots author now, Alex. Isn't it terrible? Do you know the Roots was? I'm so upset. Alex Haley, wrote the autobiography of. Well, the autobiography of Malcolm X was by Malcolm X, but he wrote it with Alex Haley, who was a journalist at the time. And I guess I have to go back and reread it. I assume he does talk.
I never actually read that.
You have not read it?
You
got to go check that book out.
Okay, definitely.
I mean, he really has a lot of his ideology and philosophy, and also you see him talk about how Malcolm X has changed, right? How he sort of has grown and learned over time, and in some ways becoming more confrontational, but also in other ways showing his admiration for Dr. King and how you have to use a lot of speak a lot of different languages, right? Sometimes you use a more aggressive approach. Sometimes nonviolence is the right way to try to effectuate change. He was a very deep thinker, and it was a terrible loss.
It was definitely, and I think that for Malcolm X and Dr. King, having them die at such a young age really changed the way that, I'll say specifically, Black people, we see politics, and we actually interact with politics as well, because I just imagine if Dr. King and Malcolm X were here today, how would they be like received? How would they be looked at as far as civil rights leaders? Because we all know before Martin Luther King died, he was not very popular amongst the overall public. And after he died, he's been whitewashed and things like that. But I wonder if he was still living, how would he be perceived? Would he be perceived as this big legend, or would there still be a large swath of the population who doesn't like him?
Well, he was so uncompromising too. You know, people say he was sometimes not aggressive enough, not assertive. I just don't see that. He called out evil where he saw it, and he was not willing to mince words. He was not willing to make compromises, but he also did embrace a nonviolent approach. And I think for that reason, some people would claim that he wasn't as
like radical.
Yeah. But his goals were incredibly radical.
No, definitely. And I think that there's just that slight difference when you come to integration and when it happened, how it happened. I definitely know that it's some people who still believe like integration should not have happened the way it did by like government force. It should have been just something naturally progressed, and then we should have had more of, all right, cool, actually make separate but equal actually equal, and then we will naturally be around each other and things like that. Because a part of it you do look at kind of after the civil rights and integration, you did have some kind of black wealth declined some because black people started going to white businesses while as white people did not go to black businesses. So you had a less of a market share or less of a base of support.
Yeah, that is a real legit concern. I mean, I think that should have been, I wouldn't say that's an argument against integration, but it would have been an argument for taking that into account and figuring out how to protect African-American businesses and also to promote new ones. I want to get back one more time just to that question I asked, is a change going to come? And I mentioned that's kind of an homage because I want us to explore that a little bit. Obviously, many changes came as a direct result of the actions of Dr. King and Malcolm X and the Civil Rights Act and the various iterations of it. But in terms, and you mentioned this, Carlos, that we haven't seen a change in wealth and income redistribution. In fact, in the early 50s, I believe we had the same gap in wealth and income that we have now, and it was reduced. It did come down over the 15 or 20 years after the early 50s, but then grew again. And we're talking about the wealth gap between blacks and whites, but also the wealth gap between the richest and everybody else is now at record levels. So yes, many changes, many good changes, but also some not so good. This is the question I want us to explore a little bit right now. Do you see positive change coming, especially in the age of Trump? In the age, by the way, not just of Trump, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Gaza, Ecocide.
Oof, a lot. I think that I have to stay somewhat optimistic about change is going to come, because if we all thought that it wasn't, it's kind of one of those like, all right, cool, give up. This is what it's going to be, and make an exit strategy for another country, or possibly, well, I'm not moving to another planet, so that kind of ends the conversation there. But I think that we have to stay somewhat positively optimistic, especially when you look at how many people are now getting disillusioned with how politics are working. You have, yes, the whole anti-Trump movement, but you also have a bunch of people who are kind of getting frustrated with there not being an inadequate response to Trump. I think that you also have people who are turning away from the authoritarian policies and things of that nature too. The one thing that I am a little cautious about is that the Democratic Party, as always, is able to reroute this power into kind of a anti-Trump power instead of an actual policies focused situation. So I'm optimistic that hopefully the actual left can bolster its messages up to capture some of those people, or the majority of them, and not have them just turn into regular everyday Democrats who don't really care who's in office. But I also think it's going to, like, the only way I think this is actually going to move forward is that you're going to need a mix of like a class-based revolution, but also you're going to have it be a racial-based revolution as well. And you're going to need everyone from different aspects of life to join into one revolution. One thing I am looking at kind of studying more is like the Lenin approach versus like a Mao theory of like, do we just need, like, you know, your more class traders to come in to be like, hey, we're gonna take a stand against the other billionaires and stuff, or do you need it to be of a working class kind of natural things like happen for like a working class revolution?
All right, you're watching Halitics right now with Carlos Childs, and the link to Carlos's YouTube channel is in the YouTube description. You definitely want to check out all of his podcasts, but especially the most recent. Well, that's what we're talking about right now, is with Gus Griffin. Yeah, I really wanted to get into that idea, like what can we do? And when you talk about a Maoist solution or a Leninist solution, what I'm hearing is kind of giving up, is that fair, on democracy, on voting? Because when you talk about a class-based, joining, a class-based revolution, I don't see that as necessarily anti-democratic. I see that not with a big D, but a little. If you can bring folks together who share the same material interests, why can't they elect? I mean, I can understand the challenges we are facing, but we were close to electing Bernie. Bernie's far from perfect. I'm not saying it would have been ideal, but we have seen this country has, on occasion, through democratic means, made advances, made improvements. And I'm wondering whether you or I mean, Gus Griffin and you did not come to the point that, well, we can't make change democratically, but you also didn't say we can. And that's what depressed me, because my whole shtick here is we have to bring poor, struggling, and working people together, period, end of story, in support of material change in their lives. Griffin said, I know I'm talking a lot, but I'll give you plenty of time to respond.
No, please, go ahead.
Griffin makes the point, the problem he saw, and he identified the Black community. I'm not doing that. He did. The Black community is not demanding material change in return for its votes. I'm saying, why don't we work together to try to call on all poor, struggling, working class people, middle class people, to demand material change in return for their votes?
No, you're definitely right. I think that there needs to be everyone should have a demand. And even with my private conversations with people, I always say you should have at least 2 to 3 policies that you use as a litmus test before voting for anyone, to be like, you have to do something to earn my vote. I think one major thing that Gus said within the podcast is that our ancestors fought for the right to vote with the understanding at that time that they can vote their way into liberation, with actually changing the system. And that, as we see, as time has progressed, it's almost impossible to just vote your way into a revolution. There has to be some sort of class struggle for it, whether it be and not promoting violence, but whether it be like a hostile takeover of the wealthy, whether it be just a systematic change through like protest means and things of that nature, that we cannot just have people still who just show up, vote, and say, oh, I voted for the right person, and that person get in office, and then you have 4 years of just, all right, cool, I'm done. I did my part. I voted. And I think you have a lot of people who currently see that as the path to well, we just need to get the right person in office. And there's one thing that Gus said that really stuck with me, is that you can get the right person in office, but if they're going into a corrupt system, then 9 times out of 10, the system is going to change you rather than you alone going in to change yourself. And that's why he also said, like, we have to first change the system before we put our entire focus onto getting the right people into the system. Because once we change the system, then it's all about just having the right people there to keep the new system going.
Yeah, we're really in a rough spot. By the way, I believe right now we are out on Facebook, but not on YouTube. So I will be uploading this video shortly once we're completed. I do apologize for those who may be waiting to see it live, but we are live, but we're not live unfortunately, on YouTube in this moment. I think we'll get there. All right. There we go. 240-242-5646, but we're in Forsaken Florida. Will blue billionaires save us? No, they will not. Blue billionaires will not save us.
No.
That is the problem. What do you think of the argument, or how would you respond to the argument when you say we can't vote our way out of this problem by supporting, I think, Democrats, at least not the current crop? What about the argument by an Andy Ellis or a Butch Ware that maybe if we vote for Greens and we elect Greens, we could vote our way out of this?
I still think that while voting for a Green Party, third party is great, there needs to be an actual change to the system, because unless we get just a whole slew of Green Party people in the office at the same time to change the system at that moment, I think you're still leaving the room there to have, let's say Andy gets in, he's the governor of Maryland. If he's governor in the same system that he's currently in, you may see a situation where they either change him or they render him so powerless that for 4 years or the 8 years, he can't really do anything. So it's kind of just a lame duck kind of a term. So I definitely think there has to be a bigger change to how we even do things, getting away from a capitalist structure to a more socialist structure of a country, of an economic system.
You sound very pessimistic, Carlos.
A little bit. I try to remain optimistic enough to be like, all right, cool, we can do it some kind of way. I just don't know when and how. But also, I've also been listening to people that kind of define how it is harder to do it, because it's not as if we are in another country that is like, capitalistic with some kind of socialist or at least democratic socialist views. We are in like the epicenter of capitalism. So capitalism is definitely going to do everything it can do to make sure there is no revolution here. And you can even look at the United States' lack of history of having revolutions here, whereas other countries have multiple revolutions.
Well, don't you think the Civil War was kind of a revolution? Wasn't Teddy Roosevelt, the trust buster, taking on Big Shug, all those monopolists, FDR, LBJ? I mean, we saw some. Do you disagree? I see it.
I disagree with a little bit of that.
There were some real meaningful changes.
Yes, there were meaningful changes. I don't know if I would fully call them revolutions from like a economic working class sense. I think we had the Civil War, definitely revolution. The kind of civil rights movement, I call it almost like a quasi revolution too. That wasn't a full one. We will change the entire system of how things work from a social and a financial standpoint. But when you look at like Latin countries that have like multiple revolutions, they go through different dictators, they go through authoritarians, they kind of take out people and replace leaders with actual like on the ground leftists who actually started a revolution. That's something that we're lacking within this country. And you even see when we have these large protest movements, how within a year or two they die out and then they never go anywhere and no systems get changed. Or you have these big protest movements, they get co-opted by a political party, and then again they go nowhere. And you can even look at Black Lives Matter, which started out as a legal justice movement, which you could say could have been a revolution to a point. But then election rolls around, and what happened? You had Democrats telling people, if you want if you don't want Trump, get rid of this whole Black Lives Matter stuff. We need the police, and let's keep it going. And you had the higher ups of Black Lives Matter, the women who ran it, actually sold out and started getting book deals, movie deals, and started buying like a TikTok house. So I think there definitely has that. We are not a country that has a large history of revolution, but also we're a relatively young country too, which may be some of the problem, that we're so young with so much power that it almost is impossible. And maybe, and it's sad to say, maybe it's going to take the fall of capitalism within this country to have that revolution.
Well, we've seen lots and lots of movements where there's co-option and the leadership makes all sorts of deals. It's extremely disheartening. Certainly in the environmental movement, you have these high six-figure presidents, or maybe even the seven figures, and they have basically viewed their role as to try to sheepdog people into the Democratic Party. I saw that not just with, the big old institutions like the Sierra Club, but much younger, like the Sunrise, yeah. Right? I mean, they told you had to vote for Harris. Well, we're not going to endorse her, but you can't vote for Trump, and you better not vote third party. But we're not endorsing Harris.
Even Bill. I mean, you even look at labor unions who have been historically just in the pocket of Democrats, even outside of, them looking from it, because at one point the Democratic Party did represent unions, did represent like actual working class people. But once that change was made through them taking corporate money, you still saw unions kind of say, hey, we're still going to stay with the Democrats because they're just a little bit better than the Republicans. So it's also harder to see a revolution when so many of the people who lead some of these big movement spaces are so kind of tied in with political parties rather than tied in with their actual base and mission that they're supposed to be about.
It's really bad. I mean, in so many different ways. I still maybe am just being naive in it. And I also have to look at myself, right? You have to be self-aware. I am fortunate. I've talked about that before. I don't want to belabor it, but I am a very privileged person in a lot of ways, certainly economically. So, I don't know that's to my benefit exactly, but I see it a certain way. And I see a system that, as for all its faults, I hope could be fixed. But that may clearly not. And I think with regard at least to the environmental crisis, there does not appear to be a potential solution to this, which is ultimately the greatest existential threat we face, no question. All right, 240-242-5646. I want to talk about Democrats, but I want to also, and I'm so annoyed about this stupid thing with the restream. Sometimes I forget that, Carlos said, where I'm not broadcasting. By the way, this is the worst possible radio. So let's talk about, or the worst possible video podcasting. Let's talk about something that people like, where we get taken to task. So I thought this was quite interesting, Carlos. We talked about Black History Month a couple of weeks ago. You were off last week. And we talked about, do we need Black History Month? And I thought it was a really good discussion. And we went back and forth. And I think we both came to the same places that ultimately, right, Black history is American history. But if we don't have a month set aside, even though it's the shortest month, we don't have sometime, probably we won't get enough. It just won't get the attention it requires. It will get even less. So I thought that was a good discussion. I don't know if did I fairly characterize?
No, yeah, that was a great discussion. Yeah.
Well, not according to one of our viewers here. They let me make sure I get this right up. I don't want to mess this up, but according to Jalia Bird, I think that's Jalia Bird. I don't know who that person is. Do you have any idea who Jalia Bird is?
No idea who that is, and I don't even know if that's a I or a L. So
it is. It could. I think it is JAL. I was like, is it Jailbird? But it's Jalia Bird. 4177.
I don't know.
So Jalia Bird says it's not your business. That's directed towards me. It is not the business of non-Black American people or Blacks who are getting validation from YTs. I think that's a dig at you, Carlos. I could
getting
be
validation?
wrong.
That's
I'll be honest
hilarious.
with you. Carlos and I are close. I hope.
Yeah.
And I think we respect each other. I
I
don't
don't
think
need
he's getting any
validation.
validation from me.
No.
I don't think he's looking to me for
Not
validation.
at all. This is hilarious, actually. So I don't understand her. I guess I understand her point.
It's a her, right?
Her, them.
Their point.
I don't fully understand their point to it, just because I look at it and say, sure, no one should try to say we need Black History Month for the validation of white people. My biggest issue with Black History Month is that it makes it seem as if Black American history is this separate thing from actual American history as a whole. And it even is kind of how we look at when we talk about American people. Like me personally, when you have politicians or just overall people who say, oh, the American people, in my mind, I never really hear that as in talking to Black Americans. It's kind of like, okay, it's white Americans first, but if you're talking to Black people, you say Black Americans. And I think that we need to come to a point in society where we view Black people the same as all other races of people, and also incorporate our history into American history, because I think that it also goes to how our structure of racism is within the country, where you have a lot of people who just don't even know all of the advancements that Black people have made in this country, and that the reason we even have certain things in this country is because of Black people. Like most of the modern inventions that we use today were created by Black American citizens. So I do think that there needs to be a conversation about why there is a Black History Month, and how do we get it to where Black History Month is going to be fully entangled into American history like it should be.
Well, I agree with that, but I also don't agree that it's not my business, right? I mean, I'm an American. I live in this country. I have a right to
you should learn about you should have access to Black history things just like everybody else. I think that's the problem.
Let's say we're talking about Jewish American history, right? Which I don't think you need to have it, but let's say we were discussing that. I wouldn't say, well, Carlos, you don't get to really weigh in because you're not a Jewish American. Be like, no, of course you get to weigh in. I mean, we all weigh in. That said, we should be, I think, common courtesy requires you to be especially open to and listen to the comments of the people who are most affected by it, impacted by it, involved in it, for sure. I mean, I would presume you know a little more, at least. I mean, you're a lot younger than I am, so I've been around longer, but you're going to know more about African-American history, and you've lived it to a sense, to a degree, obviously, that I have. So I'm going to listen to what you have to say, but the idea that certain people get to weigh in on certain topics, that to me, I have a huge problem with that. And I think that keeps us from getting to solutions too, because it silos us. It silos us. And so someone says, well, this is what we want, and give it to us. And whatever group, it could be white working people, it could be Asians, it could be whatever. No, we come together and try to solve the problems. And I understand that doesn't always work. May not work very well, but I don't know any other answer.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that, to that point, adding a little bit of nuance to it, I definitely think that there should be kind of like almost levels to it, to where if we're talking about Jewish history within the country, I definitely will like listen to what you have to say and kind of put that above someone who's not a Jewish person talking about the history within the country. When it comes to Black history, I'm definitely going to listen to a Black person kind of more than I would someone else. But I do think just like going back to the person's comment, it's kind of like, well, one, I don't know if that person is saying that they agree with Black History Month or not. It sounds like they might err on the side of thinking we should have Black History Month. And I
think they definitely want I got the sense they're huge supporters of it, and they were irritated
that we didn't agree
that
with that.
I raised the question or we discussed it. By the way, I think you were right. It is a I. My eyes are so bad. I thought it was Jaya. But I think it's Jaya bird or Haya bird or something.
But
do you know what? Does that have a meaning to you? That doesn't mean anything.
I do not know who that is. Yeah, no idea. But I will say that I also think that because Black History Month is sectioned off to just 1 month and it's not taught just throughout the
It's
year.
segregated.
It is segregated. You're right. It's segregated. But I also think that a problem with that is that it turns into a kind of we only highlight certain people, because you only have 28 days. So how many people are you really going to focus on? And that's how we got stuck with we highlight Rosa Parks, we highlight Martin Luther King, we highlight like Thurgood Marshall. We don't talk about the head of
Harriet
the sleeping
Tubman.
car
Harriet
porters.
Tubman always comes up, and she should. Incredibly important person, but
there's other people as well.
That's the other issue, is because those are the kind of many Crispus Attucks, but these are kind of the big names, the bold-faced names. And then when you try to talk about when I think a teacher or another educator, academic, or anybody talks about African American Black history in another month, people are like, well, we already had your month. What are you talking about? Why are you bringing it up now?
Yeah. And then you have other people who did different things. Like, our history is not solely defined by the civil rights movement. There are different factors that Black people contributed to, whether it be from a business standpoint, whether it be from a activist standpoint. Like, it's very little conversation.
I think the Pullman worker strikes are incredibly important. And, again, we have I do believe there's a shared destiny, and I understand, interests are different, but ultimately we're one country. We got to either rise or fall together. And I've had disagreements with some Black leaders who say, no, we have different interests than you. And I think our interests generally align based on our economic class, more our economic needs rather than our skin color. But that could be my naivete. I know people don't agree with that.
I agree with you there. One thing I'll say real quick is that I also think that there needs to be a focus on more modern day Black people to talk about too within within the whole talking about Black history, because little attention gets paid to actual people who fought the system, like a Fred Hampton, like a Black Panther Party, because the state does not really want people to talk about, hey, these are how people actually got together and fought against the actual system. But to your point too, I think that what unites people around the country is, regardless of race, class, or class is actually separate, but regardless of a race, is economics, is people being able to afford life and having certain things that are like human rights, such as healthcare, fresh water, a healthy environment, things of that nature. I will say that that does come up against some contention, because when you look at the history of economic kind of revolutions within the country, you have Black people who have continuously be put at the bottom of that care list, to where just as Gus talked about, you had who was he? FDR passed Social Security, but left out agricultural workers who were predominantly Black workers. So there was this sense of, hey, that's okay, because we'll be fine. You have
also domestic workers, right?
Yeah, domestic workers too, who were
included.
Yeah, who are mostly Black as well. You look at kind of some people here were talking about during the civil rights movement, when LBJ passed the Civil Rights Acts. It was also conversation talking about if they should also go further and pass universal health care. And it was people saying, we don't want universal health care because that means Black people will get it as well. Right. So you do have some of those things. It's like, we can have that economic revolution. I think it's some kind of side-eyeing that is correct to have, of Black people looking at like, okay, so how far are we going to go? Are you all just going to get it for yourselves? And then once we don't have it, is it going to be one of those things like, oh, I'm sorry? Or like how we talk about universal healthcare. We can have universal healthcare, but are we going to fully fund hospitals and kind of programs to get people off of dialysis, things like that in Black communities? Or are we going to talk about, could you see people even with the ACA talk about how there's going to be a closing down of rural hospitals, which are predominantly white people. No one was talking about some of the urban hospitals that was shut down because they rely on Medicaid as well. So I do think it is some of those things of if it's going to be a fully class conscious revolution, it needs to be considering everyone, and no one's going to stop fighting until we all have it.
I think those are incredibly important questions. 100% on that. I think the question, though, we ask then is, do we throw out the New Deal? Do we throw out Medicare because they didn't go far enough, and because they weren't comprehensive enough, and because there were racist and there are racist elements to it? Do we throw them out, or do we make them better? Because they obviously did improve many people's lives, including many Black people's lives. Yeah. But they weren't designed, or they were even perhaps a feature, not a bug, was that a higher percentage, a significant percentage of Black Americans were not covered by some of these policies that otherwise did a lot of good. So what do we do about that? Do we say we're not going to move forward, or we're going to make them better? And I think the answer to me should be we make them better.
Definitely. I would say you make what you can better, in systems that can no longer work. You implement new systems to take their place that are better. And you even look at unions. Like unions, you have a lot of Black people who are a part of unions, leading unions. And at one point you had unions did not want Black people in them. So there are definitely times that things can be, systems can be changed. And there are times that we need to just tear down systems and restart.
And that is also the conversation. So I would look at the Affordable Care Act, which is something you were discussing with Gus. And my sense was you had concluded that that was not a policy that could be repaired, that could be fixed, that could be made better. And obviously, the Affordable Care Act actually probably did not help Black Americans as much as other Americans, because, for example, of the rule that, you had to be working 30 hours, right? So that people who do more like day labor type jobs could be excluded or replaced with non undocumented workers. So there are a lot of problems with that. It wasn't ultimately a comprehensive solution. Whereas I think Medicare was comprehensive for seniors, but it has holes and it's not perfect. So yeah, you say Medicare for all, we can make that work for everybody. The Affordable Care Act, we probably cannot.
No, yeah, I 100%. Yeah, that sounds perfect. Yeah, because Affordable Care Act to me is not meant to be a comprehensive thing for everyone. It's meant to just do the marginal thing of, hey, we're going to give some people extra health care, expand on certain people, make sure insurance companies can't like deny you because of like pre-existing conditions. But if we're talking about making sure everyone has health care, that's not something that it sets out to do, and actually emboldens insurance companies, where you look at a universal healthcare system. And I'm more on the side of, I don't care if y'all want to call, like, if we want to call it Medicare for all, great. If we want to call it universal healthcare for all, I don't really care about the title. But I think that there needs to also be a push to, when creating this system, make sure it is a comprehensive healthcare system, but also that we address some of the inequities that have happened within the healthcare system, current or health insurance system that we currently have, whether it is black people having a higher rate of things like diabetes, things like that. I think it's also the food. It comes to, like, it is a whole system when it comes to healthcare that needs to be addressed. And unfortunately, RFK isn't, going in really fixing that issue either.
Yeah, I mean, all of this goes to comprehensive health and wellness and a universal system. I don't know that I'm more optimistic than you. I'm not optimistic, but I do have the belief that there can be change through democratic, that this country could conceivably use democratic means to change. I hope that's possible. Maybe I'm wrong. By the way, don't forget to click subscribe. There you go. If you're watching now, we're getting close to that 500, Carlos. I want to get to 500 and maybe I'll start getting money for it. I do hope that there's a way to make change. I do think that candidates who focus on progressive populism, right? Focus on the economic issue, because let's face it, all the cultural issues are important. I'm not saying they're not, and there are many cultural issues I really feel strongly about, but they also are so divisive. I think you have to focus first and foremost on making sure everyone has enough and no one has too much. Ro Khanna seems to get it there. Look, Newsom, he's talking about his fellow Californian, Governor Newsom, doesn't want to offend the donor class. So If Ro Khanna is prepared to call out his fellow California Dem, does that mean he's the answer, Carlos? Maybe we've been looking in the wrong places.
Maybe.
And Ro Khanna can lead us to the promised land.
Yeah, real quick, I will say to your last point, just about how kind of doing a more working class than a cultural or a cultural fight. I think it's also where we are with it in the country at that time, because I don't think I would have ever thought that abolish ICE would be closer to being a mainstream thing that brings people together too, and some people could see that as a cultural problem too. So I definitely want to say there is room to change cultural mindsets of a people, but Ro Khanna specifically, I think Ro Khanna has a very good chance of picking up almost like the Bernie Sanders wing of the presidential fight. I will say, look, it still depends on who all comes out in the 2028 race. I think that this is definitely something like people on the left, we do need to have like conversations about who is going to represent us as far as the left. What are our like litmus tests for people on the left too, especially running as whether it be Democrat, third party, especially during the Democratic primary, who's going to run for that. And I think it is also having conversations with some of these more ooky moderate people to say like, all right, cool, let's start talking about some of these lefty people and get out of the, oh my gosh, Gavin Newsom is just anti-Trump. I do think that there needs to be a consolidation of the broad left to look at people and saying, all right, your donors are starting to actually be who you're representing, not just, oh, you take money from them. And it's funny that you're talking about Gavin Newsom, because I was watching a clip of Joanne Reed with some other journalists who was talking to Hakeem Jeffries, and they were asking him would he still take money from AIPAC, and then his response wasn't no or yes. He was like, I will continue to raise money from all of the grassroots donors that I get, blah, 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 blah. And I think that we are getting to a point where people may have a higher conscious of knowledge to be like, you're not answering that question, and I don't want you taking any corporate money. But right. I hope this also goes towards anti-billionaires too, because I don't want to see self-funders like a J.B. Pritzker come in and us be like, well, he doesn't take corporate money.
He is the corporate money himself. He is corporate money. He's same with Trump, right? Trump, yeah. They're corporate money. I thought what Ro Khanna said here, what he says here in Current Affairs, is really good. I really agree with it. No argument. But the question is, how do we get there? Is he the right? He may have a good message, but he's going to run for president, I think. Is he the right messenger? Is he somebody who is going to bring us that FDR moment? See, I think all of these Democrats are compromised to a degree that they're just not trustworthy. So he says the right thing, but then how do we, like Obama said, Obama campaigned. This is what you and I were talking about. Mm-hmm. I find so frustrating. He campaigned as a progressive. He campaigned as someone who was going to try to take on wealth and income inequality. He spoke very eloquently about how it bothered him so much. There was so much poverty in America with so much wealth. He was an organizer in Chicago where you see that. Mm-hmm. I mean, Chicago's a rich city. There's, Michigan Mile there. I guess it's the Miracle Mile there on Michigan Avenue. And at the same time, there's terrible poverty and some of the housing complexes.
He's a wealthy. Look at him now. Now he is a multi-millionaire producing movies and things like that. And I think that the Obama effect really put a lot of leftist people on like a side-eye move to be like, look, you may say the right things, but how do I know you're actually going to do it? And I think that that's where I will rep Ro Khanna a little bit and say I feel like he is moving in the direction of knowing how to actually, that he is creating himself an actual record to say like, hey, I stood up for like X, Y, and Z. I stood up against stock buybacks of corporations. I stood up against elected Congress members trading stocks. I stood up against the secretiveness of the Epstein files, things like that. I think that they are, and also he has the experience of working hand in hand on Bernie Sanders campaigns and being one of the main people. Now, I do think he's going to have a bigger issue if we're just talking electorally with the issue of House representatives not really doing well in presidential elections, just because you represent a small number of people when you look at the grand scheme of things. But also, I think he's going to have to answer to a lot of things when it comes to Silicon Valley, like him representing that area, him representing these big tech corporations.
He's very wealthy. He's extremely. He's a multimillionaire. He made a lot of money trading stocks. I know he stopped doing that, but you can make the argument. Well, it's easy for you to say, "Well, I stopped doing it after you made your nut, you made your pile." And I think some of his positions. I'm just going to highlight this real quick, Carlos, because I want to move on a little bit, but. I think you face the same problem with Khan that you face with Obama, is that Obama wasn't so privileged, but his wife was, I believe, a corporate lawyer when he ran for Congress. It's true, he did not make a lot of money as an organizer out of law school. And I think Michelle Obama talks about how that was frustrating for her because she didn't really want to be the big, the money winner, right? She didn't want to have to be the breadwinner. And she had to be, I guess. She didn't
want to be the first lady either.
I mean, I have a lot of. Honestly, I don't have that much sympathy.
I don't have sympathy for wealthy.
She had a rough life. Her family, I don't think background. She didn't come from a wealthy family, but her brother was a big college basketball coach. Made a lot of money doing that. They weren't, they weren't poor. So I don't have that much sympathy, but I have a little bit. I'm not going to throw that out completely, but still, they were doing pretty well.
They're well off now. Definitely well off now.
And even more now. But here's what Khan has said when he was asked about voting in favor of Iron Dome. Well, to me, that's he flunked that litmus test. I really have trouble seeing myself voting for someone who tries to justify it. And it's just complete BS. My position is the same as Bernie Sanders. Oh, like that makes it okay. Which is I oppose military sales to Israel, but I support Iron Dome because it keeps Israel safe. Jack, would you support giving anti-missile systems to Nazi Germany so they could protect their factories, their weapons, their munitions factories, and the concentration camps and the railways that feed the death camps? We're just trying to protect the German lives. We're not really helping them. I find this so offensive, Carlos.
It is. I mean, this is, what is really sad? This may be the best Democrats that we get is like I just don't support offensive weapons, because I don't really see anyone in the political establishment of the Democratic Party, and I'm putting Ro Khanna in the political establishment just because he's been in office for a while. He is a part of the Progressive Caucus, the largest blah 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 caucus, all that mess. I don't see the Democratic Party taking a hardline stance of like we're just going to do a cutoff of Israel because they're so entangled. And my biggest issue with Ro Khanna in this position is, and AOC too, is that you all are the people that they would target. That AIPAC would target you to get rid of you, but you will not go as far as you need to actually say, I am against AIPAC, right, and call it out and bring more attention from the voting base. The crazier thing is that it is not that much of a base within this country for people who are like, I support giving defensive weapons to Israel. Most Americans probably don't even care, to be honest.
No. Or we say don't give it to Israel. Most Americans now sympathize with Palestine. Certainly most Democrats do. No, it's disgusting because AOC and Ro Khanna can do everything. They try to smooth down and grease up to these people. They're still not going to trust them. They'll never trust them. They're always going to. And Kamala, right? I mean, AIPAC ultimately supported Trump, not Harris, and she did everything she could to placate the Zionist lobby.
It's sad.
It's awful.
It's awful. Sad because it's also like it's one of those things because it's like I'm forgetting who the congresswoman who just won her seat, but it's like that special election race where you had the one congressman come out and say, I'm just not for all the things that Israel is doing, but I still support their right to exist, all that. And then AIPAC came out against him and made him lose the race. And a lot of people saying, oh, this shows that like AIPAC, that people are starting to come out against them. I don't think that's what it is. I think
that was Malinowski.
Yes.
Malinowski and New Jersey, and it was a very crowded primary. I talked about this quite a bit.
Mhm.
They supported the third place candidate. Her name is Wei. I think it's Tahisha Wei. That's who they wanted because she has been very staunch backer of everything pro-Israel. And then the irony was that the winner, I forget, Mejia. Her name is Mejia.
Yeah.
Anna Lilia Mejia is the least pro-Israel of all. But I don't really see that as a loss for AIPAC because they still took down the guy who.
No, I think AIPAC won this, and I actually think I was listening to your previous podcast talk about this, where I see this as AIPAC saying we didn't care about winning this race because look at how many Congress members we control. This one seat isn't really going to do anything. I think AIPAC was looking at it as we're showing all the other ones don't ever speak about us,
right?
Because we will make you lose your seat and put in one of the other people who we know we could just take them out at a later date. I think.
That's the same as Trump going after Thomas Massey. It's the exact same thing. He's not going to let anybody inside that tent throw turds at him, period.
Yep.
End of story. He doesn't care if a Democrat wins. Doesn't matter.
No, he would probably, I'm sure in his mind, if a Democrat wins, fine, we'll come out against you and then replace you next time. Like there's a sense of we shall not have no detractors. If you are supporting us, I think AIPAC probably looks at it as I'd rather know you don't support us than have someone who you support us all the time with some exceptions, because you can be slowly moved to not supporting us.
Right. And if you come out and say, hey, listen, I've already supported Israel. No one can say I'm not a fan of Israel, but they've gone too far this time. That has a lot of power, right? I mean, people will be like, yeah. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? She
was a staunch supporter.
To do that. Same with Charlie Kirk. These were dangerous people to Israel. All right, I want to show you this image because we were talking about privilege. So do you know what that picture is of? I've shown this before on Halitics.
Is that the Obama's house?
That's the Obama compound.
Ooh, that is nice.
Martha's Vineyard, yes. And I show it not to look, whatever, but
it is nice. Huh?
How can you expect people who are able to parlay government service into this kind of extraordinary? I mean, this is like royalty almost. I'm saying
it is royalty.
And this is a 8-figure estate there. I mean,
wow.
If you do what the oil companies want, you open up the artery to oil and you give, you only go so far. You don't actually support Medicare for all. You support giving more taxpayer money to pharmaceutical companies, then you get this.
Yeah.
And if you don't get this. So
you don't come president.
Are we expecting too much?
No, not at all.
When we want our leaders to say, I'm not gonna take that. I'm not gonna live like that.
What I think is funny is that seeing a picture like this and then seeing people talk about other countries where they say are like political corruption and say, oh, Maduro was hoarding the wealth for himself, or how other countries, like we talk about Russia and China, how oh, it's just making a few people at the top rich while the working class suffers. I'm like, this is directly showing us that our politicians become some of the wealthiest people within this country and are adorned as celebrities, and the working class people are left to just suffer. To me, you leaving the presidency and having like you said, an 8-figure dollar house is insane to me. It is not comparable to what you are actually making as a salary of what I think is $400,000 a year as a president. Is insane that's the house that you move into. It is insane that you go from that to having book deals, podcast deals, movie deals, and things of that nature, when you're supposed to be a public servant first and foremost, and that's what you did for your career. I think that it kind of shows the money that goes into politics, but also shows what shaking the right hands gets you. And it's a roadmap for other people who get in office.
It's so upsetting. I mean, it just breeds such cynicism, such resentment. Obama won. I always talk about this. He won Iowa. He won Ohio. And those states, he won Florida.
Yeah.
Those states are all lost. And I do believe that this is part of the reason, because people look at that and they say because people wanted hope. They wanted change. They voted for hope and change. And that didn't mean that the Obamas live like,
no one really cared. No one honestly cared about, and I'll push back a little bit with that. How I think, let's say the Obamas did the revolutionary stuff, ushered in universal health care, stopped the oil drilling, didn't do the drone strikes, all that, and made people's material lives a whole lot better. I think if they retired and wound up doing movie deals and stuff, I think people would actually not care. And I treat it almost like the Marion Barry aspect. To a point, if you're doing good by the people really don't care what you do in your personal life. Do your own thing.
Oh, I agree. I think they could have been populist heroes if they had done that. But I think the problem is it would have been a lot harder to get that rich. Yeah. And Marion Barry, he didn't live that well. I mean, I've seen his house. I was at his house.
Him, yeah.
Say that again.
You worked with him.
I did. Yeah. I did. He was my client. He was my client in a case. I mean, he lived on. He had a house on the Potomac. It was nice, but
not the money for him. My thing for him is more like the drugs, personal life, where people just did not. Right. Nobody cared, because they're like, look, you live your personal life. You just take care of us, and that's it. And I think that exchange that has happened for so long in politics is gone. And yeah, I don't know if we can get back to that, because unfortunately we live in a society now that treats politicians like celebrities.
I want to be real clear. I am not singling out. Well, I did single out Obama, so I shouldn't say I'm not singling out. But the exact same critique could be made, and I think even more powerfully, against the Clintons. Yes. Because he was the man from hope. He had nothing. He came up from nothing. Mm-hmm. She was from a middle class family. And they're worth more. They have a lot more now than the Obamas. They're like in the $200 million range. It's so much corruption. The whole Clinton global initiative, what they did to Haiti.
Yes.
They basically just made it
poverty. Like they made it poverty.
Giant sweatshop, and they destroyed the country. So I don't know. We can't. So basically, does that mean we give up the Democratic Party altogether, or do we say, okay, look here, the time is right for an AOC presidential bid. She'll take us to the promised land.
Well, unless the promised land is further into political sadness, I don't know what promised land we're getting. But you know what? One other thing I'll say to your point about Clinton's, Obama's, is that I would even be somewhat more. Actually, no, I wouldn't. It would be easier pill to swallow if they went the route of a Bush, like post presidency. Now the man paints. We hear about him every so often taking candy from Michelle, and that's it. The fact that Hillary Clinton continues to want to be paraded around, talk about politics, or that Obama still wants to kind of like make backroom calls. It's like, can't you all go with Bush's? Take up a hobby or something and let no one hear from you again.
I don't disagree with that take. I think W has shown a better way to be an ex-president. I don't want, by the way, I don't want Obama to be silent in the face of Trump. But what I want him to do is lead, is acknowledge, first of all, I'm always big on atonement because I'm a Jew and we believe in atoning. So I want him to say, hey, I messed up a lot. Let me tell you some things I shouldn't have done. And we need to do better going forward. Mm-hmm. I think that would be really helpful, honestly, to learn from his mistakes. And Clinton, I don't think, the other thing is, I guess I'm more mad at Obama too, because I he disappointed me. I had more hopes for him. I don't view him. Bill Clinton is just a sleaze, right? He's just an oily, sleazy, scuzzy guy. Yeah. And his wife is just sort of horrible and evil, a Lady Macbeth. But I hoped for President Obama. I thought he presents so well.
He's a good actor. He's a good political actor.
He seems so, I don't know. I feel like he's sincere. Mm-mm. And
that's that charisma.
So I want him to be leading a resistance because he could, but he no.
Mm-mm. I don't think he ever probably wanted to lead a resistance. I think it was very much of a, hey, I just want to get in. This is about me getting in the office. And you kind of saw, and I go back and forth whether this is a positive thing or not. You never really saw Obama build a backbench of people who we could look to and say, hey, these could be the people who takes after him to further expand on his work. But I also think when your work is corporate led, you necessarily can't make your own backbench because corporations like, this isn't your responsibility, it's our responsibility. And they already picked out Hillary will be the backbench.
Well, this is the thing. We talk about material change, and we do have a kind of a group in the left, maybe left of the Democratic Party or Greens, who are saying Clinton's, Obama, they didn't bring the material change that we demand. But there doesn't seem to be an acknowledgement or recognition we need to go somewhere in a totally different direction. And Ro Khanna is saying that, well, we need a new FDR, but he doesn't provide us with that leadership himself or identify someone who could be the new FDR. So I think it's, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think it's also, it is kind of a rewriting of history to really note that the reason FDR was as progressive as he wasn't because of FDR. It was because of all the unions, all the socialists, the communist groups that were there saying, if you don't get it done, we'll get it done. And there was a sense of, I don't want to over highlight the communist socialists to actually have a larger share. So I got to do some of this. And I think that the Democratic Party has done such a good job kind of capturing its voter base, unlike how the Republican Party is actually more scared of their voters than the Democratic Party. I think that it is hard to have another FDR because are the unions going to come out and say, we will come out against you as the president? Are you going to see you would have to have a rebuilding of these third party movements to actually force a Democrat to do something by saying, we stand here as the alternative. And that's the thing. There's no left alternative to the Democratic Party that is strong enough at this moment.
Well, look at how these attacks on the podcaster Hassan Piker, Hasnabi, because he said, I won't vote for Gavin Newsom. And everyone's like, oh, no, you have to vote for Gavin Newsom. What do you hate trans people? Which I thought was an ironic response because didn't he throw trans people under the bus when he had his interview with whoever? But that was one of the arguments.
He was like, trans people are the problem, are like some of the reasons that we lost.
Yeah. He did that. So I don't get the argument. But again, if you want the Democrat Party to change, then you have to be prepared not to vote for them, even against Republicans. That's the only way. I don't think AOC is the answer. And this is from Perry Bacon in The New Republic. If The New Republic is coming out with a pro-AOC piece, to me, that tells you she's the wrong choice. She's the wrong answer. But Perry Bacon says this as though it's a positive. AOC spoke in broad presidentially language, calling for a rules-based order and working-class-centered politics. Total, just pablum is right. It's just more for word salads. It's not. That?
What's a rules-based order? I don't even know what that means.
I think it means like the ICE doesn't just to go in and shoot people. That there's like.
Oh, is this the argument of like ICE needs to be like local police? Which I hate that argument because I'm like, local police have been killing people. So local police kill more people than ICE. Right. So should we say ICE needs to ramp up the killings? What are we doing?
Well, I think it's just more that, the president doesn't just get to make the rules as they go along. And also, I think internationally, and I may be missing the point here a little bit, I think she also was talking about internationally that the support for Israel, for example, and possibly Ukraine. Well, she would be more there going after Putin. We need to have
I don't think she's going
international rules.
Yeah. So. Okay. I mean, sure. She says the loud part out loud, I guess. I mean, she's not, to me, and I was listening to an episode of Bad Faith Podcast, so they had Dr. CBS on, who does African American studies, and she was talking about how AOC is kind of too compromised. Like there's so much that people know about her and have put her in a certain box already that she can't really break out of that. And that honestly, if she runs, she will be kind of more favored by the moderate class than she would the left. And I think that that's honestly kind of it is good for her electorally, but I think it's bad for the movement, the left movement politically, because I think AOC has enough goodwill with moderates where they think, oh, she's a fighter. She's someone who'll do it. She's not as radical as she used to be. And then you have someone on the left who still hold her in that regard of, oh, she is the squad, that she could combine both forces. I think she could be a true second iteration of Obama.
I don't think she would win. I don't think she could win. I think Obama actually campaigned. Obama didn't, people didn't really know where he stood, but he had I think more in some ways progressive cred than AOC. For example, he actually had voted against the Iraq war. He had spoken out against the Iraq war. Maybe he didn't vote. I think he did vote against it as in Congress. So he was able to present as a pro-peace alternative to Hillary. I suppose AOC could say the same thing, but she didn't vote for the MTG amendment to block the Iron Dome. She consistently supported it. I don't think she has as much progressive cred as Barack Obama did in 2008, to be perfectly honest with you. Yeah. And I also think that she could never get the Republican vote. She's so compromised by her, again, the cultural stuff, just throw that out there. I know it'd be
a turnout game for her. Can I just get enough Democrats to come out anti? And here's the problem. I want to see what's going to happen in 2028 when you have Trump's not going to be on the ballot. So you can't really have that anti-Trump kind of case to a lot of people. And I think a lot of people, this is the Democratic Party's problem. If you bolster Trump up as the one thing we're fighting so much, once he's gone, people look at his successors as, oh, well, they don't talk like him, so they might not be as bad.
Right. Yeah, you have a problem. If he's your enemy and he's no longer in power, where do you go? All right, here she is I think it's in Munich, right? This is a security conference. Here's AOC. When I read about about these statements, Carlos, I want to preface this. I thought, oh, this is pretty good. Maybe I could sort of think I could vote for her, but it doesn't sound as good, I think, as it read. But let me play it. See what you think.
Hello. Thank you so much for the interesting conversation. My name is Hagar. I'm from Israel. I'm a journalist for Haaretz, and my question is for Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. I wanted to know if you think that the Democratic presidential candidate in the 2028 elections should reevaluate military aid to Israel.
I mean, to me, this isn't just about a presidential election. Personally, I think that the United States has an obligation to uphold its own laws, particularly the Leahy laws. And
so let me stop it there for a second. So she's saying it's not just about elections, it's about upholding our laws. I find that frustrating. I think you should talk about morality first and foremost, but it's fair. She brings up the Leahy laws, which I think she should know how to pronounce the former senator's name, but retired senator's name, but okay. I thought, well, maybe she just had trouble the first time. Let me play it again, Carlos, and then I want your take on this part of it.
That the United States has an obligation to uphold its own laws, particularly the Leahy laws. And I think that personally, that the idea of completely unconditional aid, no matter what one does not make sense. I think it enabled a genocide in Gaza. And I think that we have thousands of women and children dead that was completely avoidable. And so I believe that enforcement of our own laws is...
Right, let me stop it there because she'll talk about the Leahy law again in a second. But how do you feel about that? Where she uses the word genocide, she says that by giving them unconditional aid.
It was a weird way for her to say it too. First, say that they have enabled it rather than saying like they are to me, enable gives the air of like, oh, that may not have been the goal, but it's something that kind of came out of what's happening, other than like, no, Israel did this to have a genocide. This was a planned out genocide that happened. So that's one comment. I mean, the whole Leahy thing, I don't have fault in her saying that is a that we should follow the laws. The other part that got
No, I
that got
agree.
me,
Of course we should. I'm just making it's interesting. I don't know. It's
I feel like it
interesting
should be
you
a
led with
moralistic thing first. Yeah, it should be like, first of all, because first of all, in my mind, it should have been led with like, one, what's happening is a genocide. Like that should be the first thing. But even going to her second part, when she was saying that it has, like, this unconditional aid has led to the unnecessary killings of like thousands of like women and children, it's the way she frames it to me sounds like, well, there is a easier, cleaner way for them to remove people from their land. Like why did it have to take a genocide? Why did it have to take killing of all the people? We could have just, pushed them out nicely or something. So to me, it kind of, she's trying to appease two polar opposite groups that at the same time, there is no such thing as pleasing them. It's like pleasing the wealthy and also pleasing the working class at the same time. You can't do it.
Right. That's right. If there's a strike and the working class are demanding higher wages and the wealthy don't want to pay it, the mill owner don't want to pay it, you can't please both. I mean, you can try to come up with a compromise, but
I mean, I think she
agree.
did that with the railroad worker strike. She was trying to say, well, they wanted, this, and this was good for them too. Yeah. You can't do it.
She's really, I have huge problems with her. All right. Let me play the rest of this. And no, at first when I read the story, I thought, well, she does call out do you think she's calling out the Biden-Harris administration? Do you
what
see
she just
that?
said? No.
Even though she said, well, by giving them unconditional aid.
No, that's still because you're not naming who did it. And it's a lot of people who read that as, Trump is really, because Benjamin Netanyahu supported Trump. Like, I talked to a lot of the older Democrats who look at it as they kind of push Biden out of their mind when it comes to the genocide, and says, well, that Benjamin Netanyahu, he wanted Trump in office. So you're not really calling out the Biden-Harris administration.
I agree with that. And I thought she had, but she really doesn't. And I think this is what people find so frustrating, this complete unwillingness to even, use the term side-eyed at your own party. Mm-hmm. She can't even
Democrats can't do it.
She can't do it. It's terrible.
Republicans will. That's the crazy thing. Republicans will do it.
That's right.
But Democrats won't. And the only, and I will give, and I will ding Marjorie Taylor Greene about this too. I think it is a little weak for her to come out against Trump and then say, I'm resigning from office, rather than being like, I'm going to do a Thomas Massey. I'm going to stay here and fight for actually what I believe in. So it shows the Republican Party is also weak at the same time. It's just that the Republican Party politicians, they are a little scared of the base more than they are politicians calling them out.
Yeah, she's really so disappointing again, so weak. All right, let me play the rest of. There's 14 seconds left. Let me play
through the leaky laws, which requires.
So just let me play it again, because again, the name. I just want to be clear. She's young. You're young. She should know what that law is. She should know, and we're gonna
through the leaky laws, which requires conditioning aid in any circumstance. When you see gross human rights violations is appropriate.
Well, it's that they refuse to. The Leahy law is very clear. If you refuse to allow humanitarian aid that the United States is trying to provide to a nation, if you don't allow it in, you can't get help from the United States. Obviously, there was violated.
I have some problem with that too, because let's say Israel tomorrow let in all humanitarian aid, but they continued all the bombing. Are we just going to give them bombs still? Are we going to say, hey, they're letting in aid, blow up the aid trucks? That's fine. But hey, at least they're giving aid. I think it needs to be a stronger stance of like, no, we don't want offensive or defensive weapons for Israel at all. Cut off all aid. Let them fend for themselves as a country.
Oh yeah, it's like, hey, look, they're sending all the shrapnel and cutting up all these kids into little bits into ribbons, but they're letting us bring the Band-Aids in, so it's okay.
They have morphine, Hal. What else do you want?
That's right. They got the more. All right, here you go. Let's see. How do we pronounce it? I mean, it wasn't that hard. Let's see.
Senator Patrick Leahy.
Not that hard, AOC. I don't know. Maybe I'm being way too picky.
I think you're nitpicking this, Hal. I
Am
think
I
you're
really?
nitpicking one thing.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, I don't think it's that important in the whole grand
Shouldn't
scheme
she
of
get
things.
I mean, it's kind of a microaggression, isn't it? She can't say his name, right?
Microaggression, Hal. I'm not giving you that one.
It's a little bit of a microaggression. It's a really little microaggression.
It is a small. It's so micro, no one can see it. How?
All right. Well, I'm trying to think. What if I was calling you like Carly Childs, right? I mean, that would be bad. I don't know.
A little bit. Okay.
She's got to get the name right, for crying out loud. Plus, he was a leader in her party for many years, and it's a law that she should know what it's called.
Yeah. I mean, hey, it's a law that she's standing by at this point and not calling for more than that. So, hooray, hooray.
I'll be honest, it rubbed me the wrong way. I got to be honest. For some reason, that really
I think her
me
comments for me more were very, the saddest thing is this the best that the Democrats are going to propose? Yeah. Because this is the same as I don't see any difference between this and Ro Khanna for me.
No,
I actually don't know. I actually wonder when it comes to 2028, who's going to be a better candidate. I feel like Ro Khanna only gets better correct candidate points just because he may be acceptable to like a broader group than AOC. But I also look at both of them and say that like they're both kind of like the same.
Yeah, I think they're kind of weak. I think in a debate, I think Khanna would be better. I think he's quicker with the responses.
Yeah. And also he's had more experience with debating, and as long as he's been in office more, and talking to different groups of people rather than AOC, who's more just talking to her same kind of audience.
All right. You wanted to talk about Carlos. Can you keep going? We're well past the hour.
Let's go.
All right. Let's keep going. This was a topic Carlos brought to my attention. I'm very glad he did. This is the redistricting in Maryland. And yet, despite the fact it's a free state, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who really, really wants to be House Speaker, is talking about redistricting.
Real quick, Hal, before you play this, can I say something real quick? I know you've been talking to congressional candidates, and I'm actually in my podcast, we're getting ready to start talking to some congressional candidates. Have you been asking people? Because one of the questions I'm going to ask people is, what are their thoughts on Hakeem Jeffries' performance? And then also, would they vote for him as speaker again? Because again, I'll give it to you. Republicans took a stand for Matt Gaetz. I believe he did it for his own reasons, for his own cases he got pending. But you had Lauren Boebert come out against what was his name? Kevin McCarthy. You had like people of the Freedom Caucus come out against him, and they did not face backlash in the end. But when actual leftists and progressive people were pushing AOC and the squad to force the vote, you had them literally saying, we will face so much backlash that we're not going to do it. So I wonder, with the incoming or with the people running for Congress, are you going to just support a Hakeem Jeffries? Are you just going to, tuck tail and support the same person who people are saying would be a horrible speaker and does not know how to fight?
I think it's a great question. And I did interview Ethan Wechteluk twice, actually, who's running for Congress in the 6th district here in Maryland. And I don't remember if I asked him that question. So I'm like sort of mad at myself if I didn't, because when you brought that up, I know I had made a mental note to ask any congressional candidate if they would vote for or support Hakeem Jeffries as speaker. And I think I did ask Ethan. I think he said no, but we'd have to go back to the video, and I just can't recall. But yeah, of course, I think it's a great question. So yeah, please do ask it for sure. All right, here he is. If I can play the clip real quick, and then we'll probably call this will be our last topic of the show.
In the off year.
Let's talk about Maryland, because it's a fight within your own party. The governor, Westmore, is backing this plan to redraw the one Republican essentially out of his district. This has passed the state house, but it's being held up in the state Senate by one man, the state Senate president, Bill Ferguson, who's not bringing this to the floor for a vote. What are the implications if he continues to stand against you and your party?
Could you hear that, by the way? It was a little soft, Carlos. I don't know if you could, was it loud enough for? Yeah, so he's asking about Bill Ferguson, the Senate president, who has so far refused to put to the floor a vote on redistricting the congressional map here. And that would, if it passed, it would become law because the governor's already said he supports it. He pushed it. Governor Moore pushed this, and the House of Delegates has already voted in favor of redistricting. So Jeffries is asked about that, and he's pissed. He wants Ferguson to say he'll do it.
I'm not convinced that he's going to be successful. Governor Moore has been incredibly strong, resilient, patriotic, and visionary on this issue. We know I'm very thankful to the Maryland House of Delegates who decisively passed this legislation, which, by the way, is going to give voters the opportunity in Maryland to make a decision about the future of this map. That's the difference between Democrats and Republicans. They are.
Well, all right. Well, whatever. I clipped it by mistake, but who cares?
Fine.
So what do you think? What's your take on all this?
I think it's funny. I think that you're right. For Hakeem Jeffries, this is more of like, I just want to be in control type of thing. I think that redistricting is weird for Maryland, especially because me personally, I'm not for or against it, kind of, because I kind of think it's like, it's one of those, six in one hand, half a dozen in the other, where it's one seat. It is just one seat. It is not like we are one of those states where it's like 3 Republicans or 4 or 5. It's one. And also Maryland does not have a good history when it comes to trying to get a 8-0 map. You can look at when they tried to do it last redistricting. I believe that was in 2020 when you had the Democrats put up a map and the Maryland court struck it down and said, no, this is a gerrymander map, and threatened the Democrats by saying either you all come up with a more fair map or we will draw a map, which everyone knows in the Maryland courts who look over this is our majority Hogan Republican appointed judges. They're going to put together probably a map that will put not just District 1 in play of a Republican, but maybe other districts will have some Republican representation as well. And yeah, it just seems weird that like this is the end all be all fight. I do doubt that it's just Bill Ferguson holding it up by himself. I do believe it's probably other senators who are also like, I don't see this working out in the end. And I think the real reason Moore is doing this is for a national profile. It's something that he can boast about. Next time we talk, I'm gonna send you a clip from Roland Martin, who talked to my actual state senator, Arthur Ellis, who's doing like his own quasi protest around the redistricting vote, which I'm not really understanding too much because it's like he'll still going to show up, debate, and vote on bills. He just won't tally his vote for the quorum, which I mean, not really necessary for one person to sit that out. But yeah, it's
Arthur Ellis is interesting. He does sort of weird stuff like that, doesn't he? Like he has these.
He goes on his own kind of tangent, which for certain things I appreciate. Cool. Like, I like it. Certain bills he does, I'm like, great. Like raising the minimum wage for tipped workers. He's for all that. I'm like, great. When it comes to some of the execution of some things, I'm like, this really isn't. What is this?
He's a kind of independent. He's independent, which is what people really want, I think, in our electeds, not just a yes woman or a yes man like an AOC or who ultimately they are. I mean, ultimately they'll do what their party leaders tell them to do.
What are your thoughts on redistricting?
Not what we want. I think the issue of redistricting. So I'm like you. It's only one seat. I get what you're saying. It actually could backfire, piss people off. I hate to make the argument, but I actually will say by Trump. In this case, I do really fear for free and fair elections, especially if the House has Republican control in 28. And it's not as though this isn't something the Republicans and Trump have been pushing. So it's not like it would ultimately lead, I don't believe, to a map that disproportionately favors Democrats across the country, right? I mean, it's not like now we're going to get 300 Democratic Congress members. And
Ohio's going to be all Democrat.
Right. That's not going to happen. So I grudgingly support this, although I certainly would prefer that the Democrats spend their time and energy making themselves as appealing as possible to as many Americans as possible. But under these circumstances, I don't have a problem with what Jeffries is doing and what Wes Moore is doing.
Okay. One other thing that I see with this is that, too, I haven't heard anyone talk about what this is going to do to the filing deadline of primaries either. Like, would this push those back? Are you going to have candidates who say, "Oh, wait, I was running for this race. Now let me switch over to running for Congress because my district looks different"? I mean, I will also say that I guess it doesn't matter because you can run in whatever district you want to, which I also think is a disgusting point too, because again, looking at Maryland's 5th district where I am, you have what's his name? Harry Dunn, who is running for Steny Hoyer's seat, who last election cycle ran against Sarah Elfreth in a whole different district. It doesn't live in either of those districts.
Right.
So to me, it's just disgusting how it seems like there is also a political sense of it, to where are we having redistricting just because certain people want to be in certain offices, and it's like, cool, move this around this way, and then that works for them, and it's kind of forgetting about the constituents and things like that.
There's so much wrong with our system. I mean, in so many different ways, and there's a lot of hypocrisy. Here's Jamie Raskin weighing in, says Maryland. This was back in December. Maryland should redistrict if Indiana does, kind of a threat to the Indiana legislature, which was going to gerrymander out the Democrat who represents the Indianapolis area, who's pretty progressive for Indianapolis. His name's Andre Carson. He's pretty good. And Raskin said Maryland should redistrict if Indiana does. Indiana did not. The Republican leadership bucked Trump, and they got an earful, but they did. But now here's Jamie Raskin. See, this to me is so hypocritical. He sends redistricting plea to Maryland legislature after Ferguson says no, but you already said you were gonna support.
It's weird.
You were saying it should be dependent on what Indiana does. Indiana didn't redistrict that. Yeah, I have a lot of problems with him too. He's another Dem. Progressives, he's a progressive darling. Carlos, I don't get it.
I think, and this goes to show you how progressives are just don't have that much kind of claim within the Democratic Party, which they don't. The Democratic Party care less about progressive people. And I think also progressives hold these people so tight that they refuse to look at their issues. I mean, Jamie Raskin to me there's no difference between him being a moderate to him being slightly left. To me, I consider him more like an Elizabeth Warren, where she's progressive, but she's not changing the system structurally. It's kind of just like, hey, I support more lefty things. I'm not going to do anything to get them, really.
She actually she stopped progressive movement because she could have endorsed Bernie in 2020. I don't know that would have made a difference, but it might have.
I think it would have made a slight difference if she would have dropped out a lot earlier and didn't do the whole Bernie's sexism comments. But real quick, before we hang up here too, Hal, so we talked about AOC and Ro Khanna. Do you think Chris Van Hollen is in the mix with you when it comes to people on the left running for president?
Well, I've said over and over, I think he's the one Democrat that I look at who I think really would likely win. I think he would have won in 26 or 24. Really? I think he would have won in 24. It's 26 now. I think he would have beaten Trump. I really do. You don't think so?
I don't think he had enough name recognition then. I don't think no one knew who he was. I think he would have came into a race similar to how, what was his face? The April's husband, Delaney did. The first Delaney did when he ran against Hillary and Bernie Sanders. It's kind of like, who are you and why are you? No, he didn't run then. That was Martin O'Malley.
He ran in 2020.
Yeah. Okay. Not him. Martin O'Malley.
O'Malley
when he
in
ran
2016.
for president. It's one of those things like, who are you and what are you doing here? But also Delaney in 2020. Who are you and what are you doing here? I think if Chris Van Hollen, I think now is probably the best chance that Chris Van Hollen has. But it'll be interesting because I feel like Chris Van Hollen may be one of those candidates. The more people learn about him, he has that Kamala Harris effect where the more people learn, they're like, this doesn't really, your words and your policies don't always equal out.
I think he would fare better over time. I think he would age better with voters than Harris. I think there were a number of issues where Harris really, she certainly seemed to be going back on her previous positions. I don't think there's quite as much contradictions over his record. And partly that may just be because he's been a senator for a long time and a congressman before that, whereas Harris was a district attorney. She was an attorney general.
Yeah.
So she has some other offices. So that may or may not be fair to her. I don't think he's the same. Maybe the Martin O'Malley is somewhat fair. They're both Maryland senators, but I think Van Hollen is more known. He was in the House for a long time. He had run the House re-election campaign before he became a senator. And in 24, it wouldn't have mattered if you weren't that well known. I mean, Obama wasn't very well known when he ran in 2008. So yeah. I think it wouldn't have mattered as much in 24. In fact, it could be a benefit if people don't know you because they're like going to project onto you what they want to see. I think he would have been able to present a much better answer to the question, what are you going to do differently? I think that was the reason Harris lost more than any other. She just couldn't answer that question. What will you do differently than Joe Biden? And Van Hollen would have said, I will stop providing weapons to Israel.
Would he though?
Because he'd already.
But remember, he would come out and make these grandiose speeches on the Senate floor and then vote for aid to Israel at the same time.
Well, his votes were not perfect by any means, but I think he would have been able to explain that to a degree. And he could have said, yeah, I probably shouldn't have voted the way I did, but I still think it would have come across better than Harris, which was no answer at all. Yeah. So yeah, I think Chris Van Hollen, I would probably vote for. It's hard for me to see a Democrat I would vote for. I would probably vote for him if he ran for president. I have to see how he campaigned. Look, I was prepared to consider voting for AOC until when I first heard that she had, called it out as a genocide and criticized the administration for blind support for Israel, unconditional support. But we saw the answer, not a very good one. You're not a big. You wouldn't vote for any Democrat, correct?
I would, if there was a Democrat. I'd definitely vote for a Democrat in the primary, just because I'm still registered as a Democrat. Right now, I would probably be more supportive of Ro Khanna. Again, I would have to hear like his whole policy thing, but he catches my eye first of being able to kind of cut through on the class base, a strong support of Bernie Sanders style policies and things like that. And I think he doesn't come with some of the rhetorical votes of like a Chris Van Hollen or a AOC, but also when it comes to genocide, he's not the best either. So I don't know.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think we see it a little differently. I'm more of a supporter of Van Hollen, but I definitely would look into Khanna. All right, don't forget the Left-Handed Leftist. He's on a lot of different platforms. You want to check out. I say the go-to is the Conversation with Gus Griffin. We'll be back together next week. I will be on tomorrow with Arlen for a Tuesday with Arlen.
Yay.
Carlos, thanks as always so much.
Always glad to be here. Always glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Thanks again. I give my little wave to Carlos and thank all the listeners for being part of Hell.